Good evening, folks. It's WRFU up here, Urbana 104.5 FM, broadcasting live from our brand new studio. Gonna have a special conversation, but before we do that, gonna give you the quick legal disclaimer as always. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and not to represent WRFU, UCMC, Urbana Social Forum, Airshifted, UPTV, UI Channel 7, University of Illinois Foundation, or anyone else. These words and thoughts are those of the speakers and no one else. I gotta do that. And of course, if you ever want to give us feedback or email us, you can always email WRFU at theshow1045.com or go visit the website www.theshow1045.com. Okay, let's do a quick mic check and see who's here with us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, tell them who you are, where you coming from.
My name is Donald Sherman. I'm the founder and author of Somebody Does That, a blog about compelling and unique jobs, and I'm calling from Washington, D.C.
Fantastic. We're pleased to have you. For those of you out there who don't know, Donald and I are longtime friends, and always a pleasure to have him on the radio with me. So welcome back again. So I'm going to ask you about your website, somebodydoesthat.com. And I mean, I've seen you in action with it, but give people a sense of what they can expect if they visit that website.
Absolutely. Before I start, I just want to thank you again for giving me a chance to come on the air. I always enjoy talking to you. But somebodydoesthat.com is a blog about unique and compelling jobs and the people that do them. It tells not just about the work that they do, but the stories about how they got there.
Okay. You say unique jobs. What does that mean? Can you delve into that a little bit more? Because people may be like, okay, my job is unique. Like, oh, you work at McDonald's. McDonald's is not.
Yeah, I mean, I actually get that a lot. It's not an exact science, but I can tell you some of the folks that I've spoken to, for instance, are actually a high school classmate of ours who builds spacecraft for NASA, and she is an engineer by training, but part of her background is she spent a year working in Antarctica. And so that story came about because, she was in town in D.C. telling me about her work. I was like, wow, I've never met anybody or even heard of anybody that, builds spacecraft for NASA. And, I wanted to learn more about that. And usually that's how it happens. I hear about or I'm talking to someone who has a job, and my reaction is, oh, wow, I've never heard of that, or, that's something that, you definitely don't hear about every day, and that begins a conversation. I like to refer to, the blog as a recounting of conversations with folks like that have unique and interesting jobs.
It's pretty dope, actually. Especially being in Antarctica, that's definitely unique. I'll say very few people can say they build spaceships, and they have been to Antarctica for a year. So, in terms of why you did that or why you started the blog, can you explain to people the rationale behind even doing that?
Sure. Yeah. Out here in D.C., I mentor a high school student. He's 16 years old, and I mentor some college students up at Georgetown, which is where I went to college. And one of the things that I find now is, you have a lot of kids that, they are ambitious. They have goals, and, they're motivated to become successful. But, I think they have a fairly narrow view of what success means. They see doctors, or at least they know, that the medical profession is someplace where, successful people go. They know that lawyers is a career path that successful people take. Teachers, business, sort of that nebulous idea of business, things like that. But it's still a fairly limited sort of universe as to, sort of what their possibilities are. And so in working with these young people, I wanted to find a way to expand their horizons about what's possible. And, I think part of that for anybody is maybe meeting somebody that, does a cool job that you've never heard of, or even just hearing about someone that does a job that you've never heard of, or hearing about somebody that's maybe just taking a chance in building a business or pursuing a career path that, is a little unconventional. And hearing about that person, it might not motivate you to follow directly in their footsteps, but it might motivate you to take a similar risk to do something else that, is what you want to do, but sort of outside of the norm.
Definitely. And the only thing I would quibble with is whether or not I think that lawyers are successful. I don't want to.
That's fair point. I said people think they're successful.
Fair enough. Point taken. So, in terms of where you see this blog going, obviously you feel it's a tool of advocacy and for hopefully inspiring young scholars out there. But where do you see this tool going outside of that? Do you have any outside of visions, outside of just that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I started this project, like I said, I wanted to bring stories to young people. I mean, one of the things that I like to do is, I like talking to strangers. If we're in
Didn't
an
your mother
elevator, I'll
tell
catch
you?
you up.
Didn't your mother tell you? No.
She tried. She tried.
And failed.
But I want to find a way to bring these stories to as many people as possible. Because, like I said, I think sometimes it only takes a small encounter. It might be a greeting in an elevator, like I said, or it might be reading an article about somebody on a blog like this. That can help give somebody the confidence to pursue a career path that's a little bit different. And so I hope that, talking to people like you, I can build the blog's presence on campuses across the country. One of the things that I've done is, I reached out to professors across the country. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I talked to a bunch of folks about, there's this myth that if you're an English major, you can't find a job. So I talked to a bunch of English professors across the country, Pomona out in Northern California. I talked to the chair of the English department at Howard in D.C. I talked to a professor at Butler University and asked them to reflect on that myth. And, they shared with me all of their experiences in the English department at their respective schools, the kids that they've seen go through the English programs and all of the interesting things that they've done. But I also talked to career services folks at Auburn University in Alabama and other places in the country, to get their perspective on the kinds of things that students from those schools are doing with English degrees.
Right.
And I think that's one of my goals, is to reach as many campuses across the country. So I've been reaching out to campuses across the country. But I think the next step, I'd love to turn this into a book at some point down the road, and who knows what else.
Yeah, I could definitely see the potential for that, because I think when you have so many, such a myriad of individuals with so many different stories, you have the opportunity to create something really beautiful to share with people about those experiences. Because, like you're saying, the people's perspective of what's possible is oftentimes limited by their imagination. And if they've never been shown, for example, like you're saying, an English degree doesn't necessarily just mean you have to be an English teacher or English professor. That's not what it means. You're just a competent, well-educated individual who can branch out and do other things. And I think that's a really great lesson for anyone to learn, especially when you're highlighting so many different career paths. Could you give us examples of some other interesting careers that you've come across and conversations you had?
Sure. I was in New Orleans for a friend's wedding, and I met up with a man who is a saturation diver, which basically means
saturation diver.
Yeah, he does deep sea welding off the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, and so he spends 30 days to 60 days underwater in a hyperbaric chamber, repairing oil wells and repairing other deep sea equipment for oil companies and things like that.
Good Lord.
And one of the things that I've tried to do is, there are lots of people in this country, lots of different perspectives, lots of gender, race, but also lots of different educational backgrounds. And so I tried to present as broad a picture as possible. And he's someone that didn't go to traditional college, but was trained in diving because he always loved the sea from his early days back in Fiji. And I thought he was not just had an interesting job, but a compelling story about how he came from Fiji, how he ultimately decided that four-year college wasn't the right path for him, and how he ended up going to get trained to become a diver. One of the other folks I talked to had a very different educational background. She's a woman that you and I both know from New York. Her name is Diane Billings-Burford, and she's the first chief service officer in the entire country. And basically what she does is, you know how most college campuses has someone on campus that facilitates volunteer programs and helps place students in the local community so that they can engage in volunteer projects to not just boost their skill sets and their resume, but to provide, to address a specific need in the community. And so what Diane does is, for the city of New York, she works directly with the mayor, and the mayor identifies problems in the city that maybe can't be addressed by, the social services or the police department or all of the different other government agencies.
Right.
And he implores Diane to find a way to use volunteers from the city to help address that problem. So she has volunteer projects dealing with energy efficiency, dealing with truancy, dealing with any number of issues, disaster relief, so that they're not relying just on city resources and city agencies, but on actual New Yorkers to help solve problems for other New Yorkers. It's a pretty dynamic project, and since Diane took that job, we've seen almost 100 other cities follow suit and hire chief service officers.
That is amazing. Big ups to Diane, who's taken on that responsibility in that role. I think that's helping to make New York way more efficient and not necessarily relying on more government, but more effective government to impact the good citizens of New York. So you've already given us a future sort of look for somebodydoesthat.com. What is your motivation? I mean, is it the story behind you doing this? Is that for the advocacy for the youth out there? Is there any other reason why you're drawn and compelled to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's twofold. I think everybody points to benevolent reasons. And I definitely think that I hope that this project will be a valuable resource for not just young people, but people of all ages to either find their career path or maybe reassess their career path. Some of the folks that I talk to are folks that have made significant career transitions. One of the folks that I'm going to profile in the next couple of weeks is a classmate of mine from Georgetown Law School who, went through law school, worked at a firm, and, decided that wasn't for him, and now he writes for The Daily Show. So, and I have
what a horrible career decision for him.
Yeah. I've actually a couple of people that are lawyers turned comedians. So it's actually interesting how that works out. But I think the other reason why I'm particularly interested in this is because I just like talking to people. I love hearing how people ended up where they end up, and all of the different steps and all of the different unique parts of their background that influenced the person that they became. Just like I was talking about, the individual who is a saturation diver. If not for his experience being born in Fiji and his love for the water, he might not have viewed that as an option for him. But, that was a significant reason why he decided that he wanted to spend his career in the water. And, so I love traveling, and, I've been able to travel all over this country, to Denver, to L.A., to New York. Obviously, I'm here in D.C. I've interviewed folks here. I traveled out there to Urbana-Champaign.
Oh, that's right, you did. That's right.
Atlanta, Ohio, and all over the country to interview more and more folks.
That is definitely dope. And for those, tell them the website again.
It's www.somebodydoesthat.com.
No weird special internet spelling for that. The correct part. Somebody does it. You know what I'm saying? People just come up with all random ways. Like, look it up in the dictionary, folks. Somebodydoesthat.com.
Every word is spelled exactly how it's supposed to be.
in the unabridged dictionary. And so we're going to switch gears. Right? Any other thoughts and words you want to offer people about the website? Because I think it's definitely a great resource to motivate scholars and also just informative about different career paths. Any other words or thoughts you want to offer people before we switch gears?
I just really what I want to offer people is possibility. The possibility of something that maybe they never considered before, or the possibility to pursue something that they've been considering for a long time and just never thought that somebody else took a similar risk. And, I think, at the end of the day, being able to dream big and have big goals is half the battle to accomplishing your goals.
Definitely, that's dope. Great advice from a friend of